Hi, welcome to Texas. It's been a while since I've made a video. I'm gonna get more into that probably the next video I post, which I don't know when that's gonna be, because we have some things to talk about. But let's have some fun first. We're gonna be going through the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. As some of you may know, there is a new installation in this beloved slasher franchise that appeared on Netflix over the past weekend. I did watch it, and it is time for me to rank all 9 of these movies. Now, before I get into the ranking, let me just kind of share my history with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, or TCM for short. I had my first impression of this franchise was actually watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre the beginning. I'm gonna hate saying Texas Chainsaw Massacre by the end of this video, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre the beginning was my first entry into this franchise. Now, I didn't know much going in. I knew sort of a little bit about Leatherface when I was younger. It was always kind of like Friday the 13th, obviously Halloween. You guys know how much I love Halloween, but it was always like Michael, Freddy, Jason. I grew up with those 3. And even some inklings of Chucky. Like Chucky was also very big into that equation. But Leatherface was never really my thing. I never really understood it. I always kind of found it to be macabre and just not really something I really wanted to explore. But watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, when I was younger, I kind of liked it. And then I went and watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. I think it's just called Texas Chainsaw 3D, which had Alexandra Daddario, and I had a big crush on Alexandra Daddario, and that's the only reason why I watched it. I would watch anything she was in. And then I finally, during quarantine in 2020, sat down and watched the original film. And since then, I think I've seen the original film 2 more times, each coming away with a little bit of a different feeling for the first film and also for this franchise. Now, this franchise has its fans, and I love that. But we're gonna get into the ranking, and I'm gonna talk to you about why I consider myself a very, very, very casual fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Let me know what you guys have for your ranking down below in the comments. Have you seen the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie? I will be talking about that as well. So leave all your thoughts down below in the comments. It's so weird because, again, I haven't made a YouTube video in over a month. But anyway, here we go. Starting off with number 9, the bottom of the barrel. That is going to be Texas Chainsaw 3D. I just talked about this film. Yes, this was one of my first movies that I'd ever seen in this franchise. This movie is terrible, and not in any good way. This movie just is flat out bad. The continuity makes 0 sense. The suspense of belief is laughable in this film because from what we know about the original movie, which takes place, I believe, like late 60s, I think. Don't hold me to that. I'm not 100% sure. But I know that it's before like 1974 when the movie came out. I think it was like supposed to be like late 60s, maybe early 70s. But it doesn't even matter. This movie came out, I think, in like 2013, 2012, something like that. This movie is supposed to take place 40 years after the original film. And the movie has Alexandra Daddario as a baby. 40 years later, she's like 20, and it makes absolutely no sense. Now, the reason why I say that this movie really kind of goes 40 years in the future is because some of the technology that these characters have don't make sense to the time period. So I don't like that about this movie. This movie's very, very bad, and it just looks terrible. Like, a lot of the gore is CG, and I'm not a big fan of it. So Texas Chainsaw 3D is the bottom of the barrel, the worst of the franchise, and in my opinion, one of the worst slasher films of all time. Number 8 is going to go to Leatherface. I don't like this movie. This movie's irritating. This movie had a lot of potential, in my opinion. They were trying to do an interesting whodunit, but the problem with this movie is it's not interesting because it's so predictable. Within the first 5 minutes, the first time the person who is Leatherface speaks in this film, you go, that's who Leatherface is. Because they, again, try to make a character who is like good and can do no wrong eventually become evil. And one thing I didn't mention about Texas Chainsaw 3D that I hated was that the biggest problem with that movie is they actually, at the end of that movie, make Leatherface an anti-hero, a misunderstood anti-hero. That's what Leatherface, the movie, does as well for Leatherface. It makes no sense. It's really, really bad writing throughout the entirety of the film. I felt so nasty watching it. It's like, look, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it has this white trashiness about it. All the films do. This one, more so than the others, and it's very apparent that the writing is lacking in this film. I don't like it, and I don't think other people should watch it. It's not interesting. You want to know who Leatherface is at the end? Just look at the faces of the people, and I guarantee you can pick out who it is. Number 7 is going to go to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. Another movie in this franchise is called Leatherface. This movie has Viggo Mortensen, and he's great. Everything else about this film, boring, dry, freaking filtered. It's the same movie. It's the same movie as the other two, just with less interesting characters, a not scary or menacing Leatherface that, to be honest with you, I can't even remember what Leatherface's big thing in this movie was, like what he looked like. No idea, because I remember he was the most boring part of the film, and I just remember Viggo Mortensen in it. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you get. Number 6 is actually going to go to a bad movie, but I have it over Texas Chainsaw 3 because I actually think this movie is kind of entertaining, and that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation. This movie has 2 Oscar-winning actors in it, and Renee Zellweger, who is terrible in this film, by the way. I love you, Renee. You're great. I'm happy you won your Oscar. You're bad in this movie. And Matthew McConaughey, who, all right, really is crazy. Bananas. I've never seen an actor give so much into a performance, still not be good overall, but is the most enjoyable, most fun thing I've seen out of this entire franchise. If I had to give one character a pass on being the most fun character in this entire franchise, it is Matthew McConaughey's character. Crazy. The guys in suits and the dude with like the weird like markings all over his chest and like weird piercings on his body. I don't understand what that's all about. Makes 0 sense. I felt like they were trying to do like some type of like government cover-up thing. It just, there was no real reason to have it. It kind of took away everything from the film, because then you're starting to maybe feel bad for the family, but then also you're not. It's weird. I don't really understand what that whole subplot was. But regardless, Matthew McConaughey in this film, one of the most entertaining appearances in a film I've ever seen, and I could watch it all day, every day, because I just think it's that entertaining. Number 5, it's going to go to Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, the first film I ever watched in this franchise. This movie it's not that interesting. I think the kills work in this film. I actually think that's the best part of the movie. It might be one of the better films for kills in this franchise. in the film before this one, because this is the sequel to the remake, but also a prequel. It's an interesting film. There's not really a whole lot to say about it because it's very forgetful. And I just watched it like a week ago. It's just such a forgetful movie, and it's kind of all over the place also. And it's weird because it literally focuses on one central area. It's a very isolated film, but yet it's all over the place. That's all I have to say about it. I really don't know what else to say. Number 4 is going to go to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. I don't like this movie, and it's at number 4 because I do think it is better than the films before it, but this is not a good film. I talked about it on my Letterboxd review. There are so many issues with this movie that just, to me, make this movie tread water. It's almost like it's sinking, but it's not. It's just kind of like doggy paddling its way to the finish. The entirety of the film makes you want to believe, it suspends your belief that like all these characters in this film, they're all superheroes. They all are. I mean, you have characters who have literally just been like torn apart by a chainsaw, still alive. They bring back Sally, okay? They bring Sally back from the original film, and she is the worst part about this movie. She's barely in the film, but man, is she stupid. Every character in this movie is so dumb. And I get what you could say. You could say, well, you're biased because Halloween Kills had a lot of stupid characters, but whatever. Okay, I am a little bit biased. It's Halloween. I understand that. But this movie, you're bringing back the only legacy character, okay? Halloween Kills. Let's be honest. To me, Laurie Strode is always going to be the solo, lead legacy character. So if they dumbed her down, I would be upset about it. The other characters, they're legacy characters, sure, but they're not Laurie Strode. They're not the lead legacy character. Sally is the lead and only legacy character, and she is the worst part about the film. Also, Leatherface can transport. Insane. Pretty amazing. I mean, look, it has some good things. The bus scene is great, but if you take away that scene and the pure carnage of all of it, the movie just doesn't work. And it's just not really a good continuation of this story. I don't like the fact that it takes away the entire aspect of what made the first film so scary, which is the family. Because even though Leatherface, yes, is the central villain, it is more about a family of people terrorizing other people. And when you lose that and it's only Leatherface going around, it's not nearly as effective. And so for me, I'm not a fan of this film. If you like it, I'm happy you liked it. Continue to enjoy it. Continue to watch it. Share it with other people because it'll help get other slasher films made. So definitely go do it. Number 3 is going to go to Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. This movie is weird because it was directed by Tobe Hooper, the guy who directed the original film, and it is completely different. It's almost like a remake of the original film, but they took so much fun and so much creativity in this movie, which really kind of makes it refreshing. It's not the same movie, although it still has a dinner scene, although it still has Grandpa is even much older in this film, and he's still they're trying to get on him about killing the female lead in the film, the one who you're rooting for. It still has all of that, and it's still the same beats. But there's something about this movie that I genuinely can connect with, because this movie just feels like Tobe Hooper just decided, you know what? I'm coming back to make another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and I'm going to do something different, but also familiar, and that's what this movie gives you. I don't know. I feel like this movie just has better members of the family. I like the family more in this film. I like that they have this kind of entire amusement park styled home that they live in. I love that setting. I think it looks great. So they put a lot of work into the set design in this film and also the production design. So from that type of standpoint, the technical aspects of it, I do like this movie and prefer this movie, maybe even a little bit more than the original, but it's still number 3 to me just because it doesn't do enough to get over that threshold. Coming at number 2 is going to be the remake with Jessica Biel. I really like this film. I think it's, in my opinion, the scariest of all of the films. I think that this movie has a lot of stakes in it. I feel like the one thing that drags it down is the characters aren't necessarily as likable. I feel like the movie doesn't necessarily resonate the whole family dynamic of the chainsaw family. So all of that's a little bit missing in this film, but other than that, this movie can really stand on its own and really goes toe-to-toe, I think, with the original. And number 1 is going to go to the original film. I actually, if it was about a week ago, because I watched this movie before, leading into the new one, if I hadn't watched the movie again, I don't think this would have ended up at number 1. I think I have more appreciation for this film the more I watch it, because I feel like I'm getting something different out of it every time. This movie actually has more to say than what meets the eye. When I first watched it, I didn't really feel that. And every time since, I've watched it 2 other times, every single time since, I felt that this movie actually has something to say, and I can get a little bit more out of it. I also really love the look of Leatherface. I love all the scenes with Leatherface. I like the fact that Leatherface is not necessarily the absolute evil of this family. It's actually more placed on the father of the family. So there are some interesting ideas with this movie. The one thing I don't like is Franklin. I hate that character. He's really annoying, but you always have a character like that in slashers that you're kind of just like waiting for them to die. But I do like the entire setup leading into the third act in this movie. I think it works really well. So anyway, that is my ranking of all 9 films in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Let me know your guys' ranking down below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video, whenever that may be. Bye.